Bob, I know that there's an interesting story. Operation you're running here, man.
All right.
HI, wow, okay. Right up there.
Reality TV.
And the detectorists. Yes, we're forensic men now, but no.
I'm Bob Haas. This is my friend, good friend, Chris Bergman. And we are the Westminster Cellar Hole investigators.
We had to learn to write cursive. Letters must reach the top and the bottom of the line. Miss Clough had Albert Moore for the poor thing. God, I loved Albert Moore. I walked to school no matter what the weather was. It didn't matter. I walked home for lunch. I sometimes took lunch. That was a big treat for me to take lunch to school.
Well, good morning, Bob. Very fine August morning here. How are you doing?
Beautiful August morning, Chris. I'm doing good. It is kind of like the middle of August. In fact, if we wait until noontime today, which will be in about 2 hours, it's going to be halfway through August.
Halfway through August. Wow.
That means school's coming up. School's going to start pretty soon. I guess they're probably going back at like the end of August, right?
Yeah, and so that was something I thought we might do today. I got our 1869 beers map out, and I thought maybe it would be a good idea to go and take a look at some of the schools in the town, starting over here with the school number 4, which in fact exists only today as a cellar hole. We've mapped it previously, and then take a tour of some of the extant school buildings.
Good idea. We're probably not going to hit all of them because there were 14 different school districts, but we can hit some of them.
That's right, and you know, we have a good amount of information on these schools, both in terms of documentary evidence, written narratives, particularly your daughter Jessie Haas's book on the township. We've also got some photographs we can work off of, and more importantly, we have a couple of older members of the town that actually attended some of these schools, and we'll be able to talk to them today as well.
That'd be great, yep.
So this is the back to school special.
Everybody went up in the belfry, although we were not allowed to. We all thought that was the wicked thing to do, so we all did it. The teachers that I remember are Mrs. Demon, who lived next door in that house over there. Mrs. Loomis, whom I really loved, and I think she lived down on the river road somewhere, down towards Putney.
Okay, so we're here today at the cellar hole remains. You can see the wall section right here of school number 4 in Westminster Township. The school appears on the 1869 Beers Atlas, and this is a location that Bob and I have previously mapped as part of our cellar hole project. Although there's not much to look at here today, one of the things that we're going to try and cover in today's program is a look at the schools in Westminster, schools that are still extant, and also have the opportunity to talk to a couple of ladies who actually attended these one-room schoolhouses when they were children. Standing here at school number 4, one of the themes of our work in this program is what I like to call the invisibility of the past. And of course, looking behind us here from Hickory Ridge Road, it's not possible to see any of those cellar hole remains. Of course, back in the day, about a month from now, there would have been kids, 39 kids walking to that school.
Yep.
So maybe one thing that you could talk about is how we identify such locations. What are the tools we use to identify the cellar holes that we're mapping?
The Beers Atlas was republished about, I'm going to guess, in the 1960s. So I got a copy of it. Each town in the county, in Windham County, had a map like that. And of course, I pored over it many times, and I saw the different schools, and it's identified, and the Beers identifies them as school SSC. I don't think it's school number and the district. The McClellan Atlas, which is earlier, that's 1857, I believe, just says SH for schoolhouse.
So one of the things that we've been doing because of modern technology, particularly GIS, Geographic Information Systems, is that we come out and map these locations, and we're able to create layers of our mapping and superimpose them on these older maps. And in general, where we have mapped a given location, such as school number 4, they fall very, very close to the original mapping on the Beers Atlas, for example. So we know that when we come to a given location, we're actually looking at the foundation remains of that particular schoolhouse. We're here this morning at school number 4 in Westminster Township, and we know that it appears on historic mapping. It's certainly on the 1869 Beers Atlas. What more do we know about this particular school, given that all we have are the cellar hole remains?
Some of the schools, some of those records showed the number of children from each family that attended the schools. And in 1802, there were 39 students at this school. And it gives the names of the fathers. It doesn't give the names of the mothers. I guess they didn't count in those days. But that would give you a clue to where people lived. It's not going to pinpoint it by any means, but it could be a help.
So we were just at a cellar hole location, the dilapidated remains of school number 4 in the township. We're here now with the McDowell family, who are the owners of school number 1, a historic schoolhouse which has been adapted to a family home. So McDowell family, introduce yourself to...
Yeah, hi, I'm Lauren McDowell. My husband Drew is not here, he's at work, but this is Holden. We have Callan, a few years older, and this is Anders, and a few animals roaming, but we've made this our home, so.
And so I think it's really appropriate to have the family here today, because we're getting around to school time, and today we are trying to go and look at the schoolhouses in the township. But Bob, maybe you could tell us a bit about this particular school number 1 and its relationship to the Westminster firebug, which we talked about last time.
Well, I believe this was a brick schoolhouse originally, probably built about, most of them were built about in the 1820s. There are three that are still standing in town. But My daughter, I should look at it up in the book, and this burned in 1881, and at the time the arsonist, if he did burn this one, it was very early in his, should I say, career. but people didn't attribute it to arson at the time, but afterwards, years later, as you know, maybe you got into 1883 and you had houses and barns burning all over town, they were, hey, wait a minute, maybe it was arson. So it was built probably in 1882 or 83, this building here. They decided not to. I think the records say that the walls were still standing, which makes me believe it was a brick schoolhouse, and they wondered if they could save that, but they decided to rebuild entirely.
And I think that what Lauren and her family has done is preserved a remnant of the past that otherwise would have been demolished. They have, it's been refurbished as a home, and as we'll see in historic photographs we have, even though they're modifications, the identification of the schoolhouse is unmistakable.
We girls had to wear dresses, no pants. I didn't wear jeans to school. We could wear jeans when we took tests up in Bellows Falls High School. Only when we took tests.
This is my good friend Ruth Grandy. She's the president of the Westminster Historical Society. She's lived in town all of her life.
So far.
Right? So far. And she attended school here at school number 7 in Westminster. In 1949, was it?
It was 1949. Yeah, the school got here basically because of the 1850 railroad. The initial District 7 school was up at Westminster Station near where the underpass is located today that connects Route 5 to 123. That was right in the path of where the railroad was going. So in 1850, they had to find another site, and the folks who owned this property, the Holtons, had been gracious enough to let the town purchase a small parcel of land to locate a new school. So this school was located here in 1850. I don't know for sure if it was a brand new construction. It appears that it was at the time. It could very well have had part of it moved from the other site to here. It's not that far away. School was here for 100 years. It was discontinued in 1950 while I was here attending school between 1949 and 1950 as a first grader. So I had a lot of experience with this building. Had a big pot-belly stove in the front, and the seats were bolted to the floor, and had the old-fashioned inkwells in the desks. Had a two-holer inside-out house. Was very quaint, but we did have electricity when I attended there. But I imagine that in 1850, considering there was no electricity at the time, they probably had to use lamp power to light the building.
How many kids were there when you were there?
Oh, there probably weren't more than 20 or so, because there was no actual 8th grader, but the school was intended to supply the ages from 1 through 8. We had no kindergarten at that time. It hadn't been heard of. But we had 7 grades in here, and there were enough to actually play softball with some of the older children. So I'm guessing there were probably somewhere around 20 to 24.
How did you get here? Were there rides at the time, or did you have to walk?
I used Shank's mare. I walked about a half mile coming here across these flats. Anybody who lives down here knows how the wind blows in the wintertime. And at that time, we used to get some snowstorms too. So it was a little difficult when I was coming to school. And there were days when the snow was blowing through the walls of the building bad enough so the teacher said, we aren't going to have school today, so I had to turn around and walk back home.
So but that made you mad, huh?
I think I had mixed emotions.
Did you walk when you were a first grader? Did you walk by yourself, or did you have siblings?
I walked by myself. At that time, there was no concern about a 6-year-old child walking along the road.
Well, I was thinking more of walking through the snow and.
Oh, well, the streets had been plowed.
Oh, okay.
Because that is a state highway, and the state highway department has the management of the roads. So there actually was a little area off the travel portion where it was safe to walk.
Where did you live then?
I lived down here on Westminster Flats across from where the Chickering family had their auction barn business many years ago.
Memorial Day, we all brought flowers to school, lilacs, because everybody had lilacs. And we lined up here, and we marched down to the old cemetery, and we put them on the graves of the soldiers, which they all had flags then.
Yeah.
All right, Ward, according to Jesse's book, Ward Seminary, or Westminster Seminary, started in 1849 and was called Ward Seminary. Lafayette Ward taught here. He was a very good manager and a magnetic teacher. Students from all over New England, New York, Ohio, Indiana, students boarded around town until 1855 when the town of Westminster built a boarding house behind the school known as the jail. Ward departed in 1858. Also, the building also housed District Number 8 as well as the seminary. And it was District 8 until 1953. Up to 100 students, 4 terms a year is the way she has it. This is my friend Barb Greenough. She lived here, you've lived in town all your life, right, just about?
Well, when I was married, I lived in North Walpole, but
Yeah.
I was always here.
Yep. She's a trustee on the Westminster Historical Society, and she attended school here in District Number 8. So we'll let you tell us all about what you remember from school. Were you a good pupil? You behave yourself?
Oh, when was that I ever behaved myself? I guess. I remember there were 3 rooms in the school, and there were not 2 doors there when I was going to school. There was 1 door, double door, here in the middle. And we would line up and march in, and I think 1st, 2nd, 3rd were down the hall on the left, and then 4th, 5th, and 6th were by the door right here in this first room on the right. And then the big kids, 7th and 8th grade, were upstairs. I remember big round pencils. No ballpoints were invented yet. Inkwells in the desk, holes in the desk, and big blue bottles of Carter's ink. Each class went up to the front to sit in a circle for a lesson. In the winter, for recess, we played King of the Hill on top of snowbanks. Wet wool snow pants. There was no synthetic materials. We played records in school and danced the Virginia Reel. All of us feared going over in the back there and falling off those stairs and landed on the picket fence. I think I remember, and this is faint, but I think I remember Joe Pirozello getting hung up on that fence. He fell on it somehow or got hooked up on it. I can't remember, but I remember people coming and rushing and carrying him off. First thing after we got into the building, we had to stand by our chairs, put our hands over our hearts and say the Pledge of Allegiance to begin the day. I remember, it was really weird, somebody came to school and we had to sit in a chair, and somebody put fluoride on our teeth with a Q-tip when it was first invented.
This is school district number 11 on Hartley Hill Road. Hartley Hill Road goes over the mountain and winds up in Saxons River. It's one of the 3 brick schoolhouses left in town. This one and one on West Road, and there's another one on the road to Saxons River, and I believe they were all built about the same time, about 1820. I don't know an awful lot about this one. I don't have any school records or anything like that. But
I think the interesting thing about this particular school and its condition today is that you can clearly see the original school brick schoolhouse, and then the elements to the school that have been added. So I like this because the owner of this house, it's been repurposed now as a family dwelling, has actually retained the historic character of the original schoolhouse while adding additional rooms for family space. So this is a good example of, preserving the past while also recognizing that needs change. And so we started as a schoolhouse and now it's a family home. Obviously, for a family home you'd need a much bigger living space, but nonetheless they've managed to retain the original character of the brick schoolhouse.
wouldn't you have thought that maybe a couple more windows? There's no evidence that they've been changed. It's been pretty dark in there.
Well, it would have been dark, if there were 20 kids in there. You can imagine, how cramped the space was. To go back to the original cellar hole at school number 4 we started at this morning, how cramped that space would have been. We do have good historic photographs of this particular schoolhouse. One other item of note with this particular schoolhouse, being repurposed as a family home, it's not only retained the character of the brick schoolhouse up front, but the addition to the house, which increased its size, has exactly mirrored the character of the original schoolhouse, albeit with different materials. Well, Bob, that was a great tour today of a few of the schoolhouses. As you have indicated, we didn't get to see them all, but we saw 4 of the 14.
Yeah, I thought it was a good tour. I'm glad we were able to get Ruth and Barbara into it, and nothing like having first-hand experience.
People who attended the school, and also, we've been able to look at the archaeological footprint of a school, District Number 4 school, which exists only now as a probably a crawl space foundation.
Yeah, I don't even know if there's a picture of it. I doubt it.
And then we got to see a couple of schools that had been converted into houses and still retained enough of their character to be recognizable as such. Yep. And so I think schools are an anchor for our communities. Of course, in Westminster, the schools go back to when do we think?
I wouldn't have expected the first one could have been built as early as 1780, because like they talk about the one that we went to, number 4, and the record book that I have talks about either rehabbing the old school or maybe rebuilding or building a new school, and that was in 1802. So you figure if they're going to have to rehab the school, the old school, it could have been built as early as 1780, something like that.
So we really have an unbroken tradition here of school buildings still standing, and in point of fact, our neighbors having attended some of those schools before they stopped being schools, before the modern school system erected some of the school buildings we have today. One of the great things about this kind of work is that with historic studies, historic archaeological studies in particular. We have, in this instance, the dilapidated remains of a school. We have extant schools by which we can get an understanding of what they looked like when they were in use. We have photographs of those schools. We have informant interviews, Barbara and Ruth having both attended those schools. And of course the Westminster Historical Society has a number of items that have been put in their permanent curation, and they include things like from the District 1 school, which is the one that we visited down on the West Road. It's a modern family home. We have a report card. We have a ledger book, which I believe relates to the finances of the school.
Yes.
And then from District 1 as well, we also have this little public school souvenir booklet.
District 1 was also called the South Valley School.
South Valley School, and South Valley Farm is there, and South Valley Farm Road is there today. And
originally, when we first came around here, they called that Crooked Neck Smith Road, and I don't know where that came from, but maybe.
But the interesting thing, of course, for us with South Valley Farm Road is that just off of South Valley Farm Road is the family cemetery of the original inhabitants of the Patch Farm, which we featured on an earlier show.
Yeah, and South Valley Road is a lot more politically correct than Crooked Neck Smith Road.
Crooked Neck Smith Road, yes. Although Crooked Neck Smith Road is more colorful, I would say.
Maybe.
It has some local character. The last thing that I think is really interesting is that we have a geography book here, and it's dated 1868. It's a school book. And we know because of inscriptions in the front of the book that there is a date of December 28th, 1868, and it identifies it as coming from District School number 14.
Yep.
Number 14, of course, is in the northern part of the township.
Yep.
And the interesting thing about this book is that in the maps of the current United States, the area of Alaska and adjoining areas is referred to as Russian America.
Yep.
So these books, the buildings they were used in, the people who went to school there are all part of a living historic record of this township.
Right. I'm Bob Haas.
And I'm Chris Bergman.
And we're the
Westminster Cellar Hole Investigators.